So imagine an ancient text. But it reads less like a dry, dusty religious manual and a whole lot more like, I don't know, a high-stakes, breathless political thriller.
Oh, absolutely. It has all the elements.
Right. I mean, I am talking about a narrative that is set right inside a massive, violently expanding empire.
Yeah, a true global superpower of the ancient world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you've got cutthroat bureaucratic maneuvering. You've got these dark assassination plots being whispered in palace courtyards.
Yeah, and the banquets?
Yes, the opulent royal banquets that literally last for months. Plus, a literal genocidal decree sealed with a king's ring.
Which is terrifying.
It is. And then there's this massive mind-bending plot twist that hinges entirely on, of all things, a supreme ruler's random bout of insomnia.
I mean, it really is a masterclass in suspense. If you stripped away the historical context and just, pitched this to a network today,
Well, they buy it in a heartbeat.
they really would. It has all the elements of a modern, multi-season prestige television drama. But it was written millennia ago, which makes its narrative sophistication all the more staggering, really.
It's incredible, and that's exactly where we are going today. We're taking a deep dive into a comprehensive, incredibly detailed survey of this exact text, the Book of Esther.
Authored by Chris Arvelesis.
Right, the Velasis survey. But before we get into the weeds of the author's specific historical and literary arguments, let's talk about you, the listener.
Why does this matter today?
Exactly. Why should you care about an ancient Persian court drama? Because, honestly, whether you realize it or not, you are constantly navigating complex hierarchies in your own life.
Every single day.
Yeah. You are dealing with systemic pressures. Maybe that's in your corporate career, your local community, or just, society at large.
And you are constantly trying to figure out how to maintain your personal integrity when the institutional odds are completely stacked against you.
Perfectly said. This deep dive is essentially a masterclass in courage. It's about the absolute importance of timing and, well, finding the hidden levers of power when you feel completely vulnerable and marginalized.
That is the perfect way to frame it, because it is fundamentally a blueprint for survival.
A survival guide.
Yes. The Book of Esther, or in the Jewish tradition, Megillat Esther, the Scroll of Esther, was originally written as an identity-forming narrative for diaspora Jews living under imperial rule.
Right.
But the psychological and sociological lessons it offers on how to navigate overwhelming, crushing systems without losing your core identity, those are entirely urgently applicable today.
So relevant.
Yeah.
And what Velisis does so beautifully in this survey is that he treats Esther as canonical scripture, but he reads it with this highly critical, historically grounded eye.
Right. He carefully separates what the text plainly states from what is historically probable.
And what remains fiercely debated in modern biblical scholarship. Okay, so let's unpack this. Because to really feel the weight of this story, we can't just jump into the plot.
No, you need the context.
We need to set the scene. We really need to understand the board before we look at the pieces. So the story takes place in the Achaemenid Persian Empire.
Specifically in the royal center of Susa, or Shushan.
Susa, right. And the king sitting on the throne in this narrative is Ahasuerus, who is historically identified by almost all modern scholars as Xerxes I.
Yes, Xerxes I, which puts us right around 486 to 465 BCE.
Okay, so what strikes me immediately from the source document is the sheer scale of this world. I mean, this isn't a quaint little village kingdom.
Not at all.
This isn't a chieftain ruling over a couple of hills.
Yeah.
This is a massive, highly developed, incredibly wealthy, and heavily bureaucratic global superpower.
To really understand Esther, you have to profoundly understand the crushing, almost unimaginable scale of the Persian Empire at this time in history.
How big are we talking?
We are talking about a Rome that stretched across 127 provinces, all the way from India to Ethiopia. Yeah. It was a logistical nightmare that they somehow managed to turn into a well-oiled machine. And what's fascinating here is how modern archaeology strongly corroborates the physical setting of this book.
Oh, really? So we actually have physical proof of this palace.
We do. Velesis points out that excavations of the Palace of Darius, which is also known as the Apadana in Susa, have confirmed it as a major Achaemenid royal center.
So it had that monumental, awe-inspiring architecture the book talks about.
Exactly. So the extravagant court setting described in Esther isn't just some fairy tale backdrop, it's historically plausible.
I want to dig into that plausibility, actually, because when you read the text, the descriptions of the palace and the administration are so incredibly specific.
Right, down to the fabrics and the stones.
Yeah. It doesn't read like someone vaguely guessing what a palace looks like from 1,000 miles away.
No, it reads like an insider's account. The author had real intimate knowledge of Persian customs, court terminology, and administrative law.
They really knew their stuff.
They did, but beyond just the physical palace, we have an incredible historical resource called the Persepolis fortification tablets. Have you heard of these?
I mean, I know they are ancient records, but what exactly are they tracking? Are they like historical chronicles of wars and kings and stuff?
No, actually, they are far more mundane, which is exactly why they are so valuable to historians.
Mundane how?
They are administrative archives, essentially massive piles of receipts, tax records, and bureaucratic memos.
Oh, wow. Ancient receipts.
Yes. From the periods of Darius, Xerxes, and Artaxerxes I, they record daily rations of grain, wine, and sheep.
So just the daily grind of running an empire.
Right. And what they reveal is the immense scale and the terrifying sophistication of the Achaemenid bureaucracy.
Terrifying is a good word for it.
We are talking about a highly structured world of scribes, eunuchs, provincial governors, postal couriers, and these incredibly complex patronage networks.
So it's not just rich, it's rigid.
Extremely rigid. The empire is wealthy, yes, but it is also inherently violent and intensely regulated. Access to power is strictly mediated.
Can't just walk up to the king.
Exactly. It's entirely based on your status and your physical proximity to the king.
Okay, let's talk about that wealth and power, because the Book of Esther opens with an absolute bang.
It really does.
Chapter 1, right.
Right.
King Ahasuerus throws a banquet. But it's not a weekend gala. It lasts for 180 days.
180 days.
6 months. And as if that wasn't enough, it's immediately followed by a 7-day feast for all the people in the citadel of Susa.
The entire city.
Yeah. And the text goes out of its way to describe the luxury. White cotton curtains, violet hangings fastened with silver rings to marble pillars.
The detail is staggering.
Couches made of solid gold and silver, resting on mosaic pavements of porphyry, marble, mother of pearl.
And other costly stones, yeah.
Right. And they're drinking royal wine from unique golden goblets. And the text notes specifically there is no limit on the drinking.
Everyone can drink as much as they want.
Now wait, pause. I have to push back a little here, or at least try to translate this into modern terms, because my first thought is, this is an exaggeration, right?
It sounds like it.
But even if we take it literally, a 180-day party isn't just hospitality. Nobody wants house guests for 6 months.
Definitely not.
This feels like a massive corporate PR stunt, or honestly, a multi-million-dollar military parade. Why on earth does a regime feel the need to flex its economic and political power for half a year?
This raises such an important question about the psychology of power. And you've hit on exactly what the ancient author is trying to convey here.
Okay.
This 180-day display is pure, unadulterated imperial propaganda.
Propaganda.
It is a psychological weapon. Historical interpreters widely connect this specific opening banquet to Xerxes' preparation for his massive, ill-fated military campaign against Greece.
Oh, the Greek campaign. So this is prep for war.
Yes. He is gathering his generals, his provincial leaders, his nobility from across the known world.
And bringing them all to Susa.
Bringing them to Susa to show off his inexhaustible resources, to dazzle them, to intimidate them, and ultimately to secure their loyalty and their financial backing for his war.
So it's like a 6-month-long investor pitch meeting, but with endless wine and golden couches.
That is exactly what it is. While the biblical text doesn't explicitly mention the Greek campaign, the timeline aligns perfectly with Xerxes I's historical movements.
That makes so much sense.
The feast underscores excess and spectacle. It is designed to say, look at my absolute terrifying power. Do not even think about rebelling against me because my resources are infinite.
It's a system designed to make the individual feel completely microscopic.
Yes, utterly insignificant compared to the empire.
But here's where the narrative brilliance of this text really kicks in. Because there is a massive, almost comical irony hiding right behind all those majestic marble pillars and golden goblets, isn't there?
Oh, there really is.
The author sets up this image of absolute, terrifying, godlike power and then immediately undercuts it.
Brilliantly undercuts it. The transition is masterful.
Tell me about the transition.
So on the 7th day of the subsequent smaller feast, the text notes that the king is, quote, merry with wine.
Which means he's hammered.
Let's be clear, he is highly intoxicated. And in his drunken state, he commands his queen, Vashti, to be brought before the male guests, wearing her royal crown, simply to show off her beauty.
He wants to parade her like another piece of gold furniture.
Exactly. And Vashti, she simply refuses to come.
She says no.
She says no.
And this is where human authority, despite all its unimaginable wealth and its military reach, is exposed as incredibly contingent and brittle.
It really is.
Let's really think about the irony here. This is a king who rules 127 provinces. He commands armies that literally shake the earth when they march.
Right.
He just spent half a year proving that he controls the world, but he cannot even control his own household.
Yeah.
He orders his wife to appear, and she says no.
And the entire imperial apparatus absolutely loses its collective mind.
They completely panic.
Total systemic panic. Because autocracies are always fundamentally insecure.
That is such a good point.
The king's male counselors, specifically a high-ranking figure named Memucan, have to step in. And what's amazing is how they convert a personal domestic embarrassment into a massive empire-wide legislative crisis.
Oh yeah, Memucan's speech is wild.
He argues that Vashti's refusal isn't just an insult to the king, it's a structural threat to the entire patriarchal order of the empire.
Right.
He says, and I'm paraphrasing here, if word of this gets out, every noblewoman in the empire is going to hear about it, and they will all start despising their husbands. We will have endless contempt and wrath.
It's hilarious, honestly. They are so terrified of their wives finding out that the queen said no.
Right. So what is their solution? They issue a ridiculous, sweeping royal edict.
Oh, this is the best part.
They send couriers to all 127 provinces, translating this decree into every local script and language, legally declaring that every man should be the master of his own house.
It's almost pathetic. I mean, think about it. A global superpower that cannot control a single woman's autonomy issues a legally binding bureaucratic decree demanding household order across the known world.
It's a massive overreaction.
It's a perfect illustration of how institutional power often hides deep structural insecurity. The empire presents a facade of absolute, impenetrable control, but behind the scenes, it's masking total paranoia.
Yeah. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this understanding of the overwhelming, heavily bureaucratic, yet deeply insecure secular scale of this empire, perfectly sets up why the author chose to write this survival story using such unique literary tools.
Right, the style of the text itself.
The author isn't just telling us what happened, they are mocking the empire while they do it.
And that brings us to the actual mechanics of the writing, because the Book of Esther is widely categorized by modern scholars as a historical novella or a diaspora court tale, right?
Yes, those are the common academic terms for it.
Yes, it has a strong historical core, like we said. The setting is demonstrably real, the bureaucracy is accurate, the customs check out. But it is also a stunningly crafted piece of literature.
Highly crafted.
It is not just a dry chronological textbook of this happened, then this guy died. It uses profound literary devices.
The survey mentions it leans heavily on satire, irony, escalating banquets, and a very specific structure called a chiasm.
Okay, a chiasm.
Yeah.
Let's really dig into that chiastic structure because it is the hidden engine driving the psychological suspense of the book.
It really is.
For a modern listener, a chiasm might sound like an obscure academic term, but it was a foundational storytelling technique in the ancient world, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely foundational. Simply put, a chiasm is a literary device where a sequence of ideas or events is presented, and then that exact same sequence is repeated, but in reverse order.
Give me an example.
So you have point A, point B, point C, point D, and then the story works backward. Point D, point C, point B, point A.
So it's essentially a giant mirror. The second half of the story reflects the first half, but in reverse.
Exactly.
But why write like that? Why not just tell a straight story from beginning to end? Is it just the author showing off how clever they are?
It's actually much deeper than that. In ancient, predominantly oral cultures, this symmetrical structure served a massive mnemonic purpose.
Mnemonic, like a memory aid.
Exactly. It helped storytellers remember the narrative arc when they were reciting it out loud.
Well, that makes sense.
But more importantly for the listener, it builds a subconscious sense of inevitability and suspense.
How so?
Well, when you realize the story is folding back in on itself, you start anticipating the reversals. You know that whatever goes up in the first half must come down in the exact same way in the second half.
Ah, I see.
And the Book of Esther is structured as one giant, intricate, book-level chiasm.
Okay, I need to see how this works. Walk me through the actual breakdown. How does this massive mirror structure actually play out across the 10 chapters?
It's remarkably precise. It begins with the outermost layer, let's call it A, the royal crisis, where Queen Vashti is removed in chapter 1.
Right.
It ends with the corresponding A prime, the resolution of the crisis and the ongoing remembrance of the new royal reality under the empire in chapters 9 and 10.
Okay, so that's the outer shell.
Then you step one layer inward. B. Esther is elevated to queen in chapter 2.
And what's the mirror for that?
This mirrors B prime at the end of the book.
Oh.
Mordecai is exalted, and the Jewish people are elevated in chapters 8 and 10.
Wow, okay.
You step inward again. C. Haman, the villain, plots his genocide against the Jews in chapter 3.
The major conflict.
Right. And this perfectly mirrors C prime, the Jewish defense and the complete reversal of Haman's plot in chapters 8 and 9.
Perfectly symmetric.
One more layer in. D. Esther fasts and makes her dangerous, uninvited first appeal to the king in chapters 4 and 5.
And the mirror.
This corresponds to D prime, Esther's second decisive appeal where Haman actually falls in chapter 7.
Which leaves the center, the absolute middle of the mirror, the pivot upon which this entire ancient narrative turns.
Exactly. The central pivot of the entire chiasm, the E section, the hinge on which the whole genocide plot turns, is chapter 6.
And what happens in chapter 6?
The king has a sleepless night.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Think about this. You are reading a narrative about the existential survival of an entire ethnic group.
A literal genocide is on the line.
Yes. You are dealing with the highest echelons of a global superpower, massive wealth, and a legally binding decree of total annihilation.
Right?
And the turning point of the entire book isn't a massive battle sequence. It's not an army marching over the horizon. It's not an earthquake.
Yeah.
It's a random Tuesday night where a bureaucratic king happens to have insomnia.
It is the ultimate anticlimax that suddenly becomes the ultimate climax.
It's brilliant.
The king cannot sleep. So what does an absolute monarch do when he's bored and awake? He doesn't ask for music. He asks for the royal chronicles, the incredibly dry, bureaucratic record of daily court events, to be read to him.
Probably hoping the sheer boredom of tax records will put him to sleep, right?
Exactly. And the scribes randomly just happen to read the specific entry from years prior where Mordecai, Esther's adoptive father, uncovered an assassination plot against the king.
Oh, I remember this. Mordecai had saved the king's life.
But the text explicitly notes he was never rewarded for it. The king hears this, realizes there's been a breach of royal protocol, and decides he needs to honor Mordecai immediately.
And the irony here is just dripping off the page, because at that exact precise moment, Haman, the man who has engineered the genocide against Mordecai's people, is walking into the outer court.
Right.
Haman personally hates Mordecai so much that he just built a massive 75-foot gallows in his backyard to execute him on. And he's there at the crack of dawn to ask the king for permission to hang Mordecai.
The timing is almost unbelievably perfect. Before Haman can even open his mouth to ask for Mordecai's execution, the king asks him a question.
What does he ask?
He says, "What should be done for the man the king delights to honor?"
Oh, no.
Now, Haman, who is completely blinded by his own towering narcissism and vanity, assumes the king must be talking about him.
Of course he does. Who else would the king delight to honor?
So Haman swings for the fences. He suggests a lavish, deeply symbolic royal parade. He says essentially, take the royal robes the king himself has worn. Take the king's own horse with a royal crest on its head.
He wants to look like the king.
Exactly. He says, put the robes on this man, put him on the horse, and have one of your most noble princes lead him through the city square, shouting his praises for everyone to hear.
And what does the king say?
The king says, great idea. Take the robes and the horse and go do exactly that for Mordecai the Jew.
It is the ultimate boomerang effect.
Yeah.
And this is what I mean when I say the empire's own tools are constantly weaponized against it throughout this book.
They absolutely are.
It is brilliant, biting satire.
Yeah.
Haman, the second most powerful man in the world, the man plotting a genocide, has to personally act as a footman. He has to lead the very man he wants to murder through the city square, screaming his praises.
It's pure humiliation.
And it doesn't stop there. The gallows that Haman built for Mordecai become his own execution site.
Right.
The public decrees of death sent out by couriers are countered by new public decrees of life sent out by faster couriers.
Yes.
Even the banquets, which were the ultimate symbol of Persian dominance in Chapter 1, become traps. Esther uses a sequence of private banquets to lull Haman into a false sense of security before springing the trap on him. Everything folds back on itself.
The author is repeatedly turning the machinery of the empire upside down. It's a subversion of power.
Total subversion.
And perhaps the most profound illustrative example of this subversion is the wordplay on the central concept of lots.
Lots, like casting lots.
Right. The word in the ancient text is pur, which becomes pluralized as Purim. When Haman decides to annihilate the Jewish people, he doesn't just pick a date on a calendar.
He rolls the dice, essentially.
He uses a literal lottery, casting lots per two, randomly select the month and the day for the destruction.
I want to make sure I'm grasping the psychological weight of this. He is treating human life, the survival of an entire ancient civilization, like a casual game of chance, a roll of the dice in a back room.
Exactly. From Haman's perspective, he is relying on fate or chance, or perhaps consulting his own pagan deities through ancient divination practices to find the most auspicious day for mass murder.
He thinks he's in control of the chaos.
He believes the universe is chaotic, or at least entirely subject to his manipulation, but the chiastic literary structure flips this entirely.
How so?
The author is using the structure of the story to show that what looks like random chance to the secular eye, a rolled die, a king's random bout of insomnia, a perfectly timed reading of an old chronicle, Haman walking into the court at the exact wrong second, is actually a deeply ordered, highly orchestrated sequence of events.
Ah, I see.
The day chosen by the chaotic lot for destruction becomes the exact, precise day of their miraculous deliverance.
Which brings us to a massive, glaring omission. The absolute elephant in the room when it comes to the Book of Esther.
Yes, the big one.
We are talking about a canonical book of the Bible. It is situated right there in the Hebrew Scriptures, revered for millennia, and yet,
in the original Hebrew text of the Book of Esther, the name of God is never mentioned. Not even once.
0 times. No Yahweh, no Elohim, no Lord, no Creator, nothing.
Nothing at all.
So what does this all mean for you as a reader? I'm putting myself in the shoes of someone opening this text for the first time. If this is canonical Scripture, why leave God out completely?
It's a great question.
Was the author just being secular? Was it a mistake? Because Vilas's notes in the survey that later religious traditions were deeply, profoundly uncomfortable with this absence.
They were very uncomfortable.
The later Greek translation of Esther the Septuagint actually added over 100 verses of explicit prayers, dreams, and overt theological framing just to make sure God was officially on the page.
Yes, the Greek translators essentially felt the need to fix the text.
To make it more religious.
They added scenes where Esther is desperately praying to God, saying things like, "I hate the splendor of the wicked and I abhor the bed of the uncircumcised."
Okay.
They made Mordecai explicitly pray for deliverance. They wanted to ensure the theology wasn't subtle.
They wanted it loud and clear.
But what's fascinating here is that the omission in the original Hebrew text is absolutely not a deficiency. It is not an accident, and the author didn't just forget.
So it was intentional.
It is a highly deliberate, utterly brilliant literary and theological strategy. The absence of the divine name is actually the core message of the book, acting as a profound mirror for the lived experience of the diaspora community.
Okay, let's unpack that term diaspora because it's crucial. We are talking about the Jews living outside of their ancestral homeland of Jerusalem, scattered across the vast expanse of the Persian Empire, right?
Yes. The diaspora refers to the dispersion. And think about the psychological reality of that existence.
It must have been isolating.
When you are an ethnic or religious minority living under the crushing, suffocating weight of a massive, hostile, secular empire, God feels hidden.
That makes a lot of sense.
Think about the earlier stories in the Hebrew Bible. The Exodus. You have burning bushes. You have the Red Sea parting in half. You have booming voices from heaven, pillars of fire, and prophets calling down plagues.
Right, very flashy miracles.
But in Susa, there are no burning bushes in Susa. There are no seas parting. The temple in Jerusalem is 1,000 miles away, lying in ruins or slowly being rebuilt.
You're just surrounded by Persia.
You are surrounded every single day by the overwhelming, tangible reality of Persian military power, Persian legal decrees, and Persian gods.
So the text reflects that feeling.
The author is brilliantly matching the literary form of the text to the historical reality of the diaspora experience. The hiddenness of the divine name in the story perfectly reflects the perceived hiddenness of divine action in exile.
Wait, pause. I want to push back on this just a bit to make sure I'm not just projecting my own modern meaning onto an ancient text.
Sure.
If I'm a skeptic, I might look at this and say, Maybe it's just a secular political thriller that somehow got grandfathered into the Bible. How do we know the author is intentionally teaching a theology of hiddenness, rather than just writing a story where God isn't involved?
It's a fair question, and it's one scholars do debate. But if you look closely at the text, the coincidences are so tightly stacked, so perfectly orchestrated, that they demand a reader to look behind the curtain.
Like the insomnia.
Exactly. The author is forcing you to ask who is moving these pieces. By refusing to write God into the text explicitly, the author forces the reader to look for him implicitly in the margins.
In the timing.
In the insomnia, in the perfectly timed delays, in the fact that Esther just happens to be chosen. Valasis notes in his survey that this theology of hidden providence is incredibly profound.
What's the main takeaway of that theology?
The message is that God is preserving his covenant people through ordinary-seeming, deeply human, often completely hidden means. This is a theological logic that runs from Genesis right through the canon.
Even when he's not named.
Even where God is not overtly named, the ancient covenant promise that Abraham's offspring would be preserved is implicitly, powerfully at work. Providence doesn't always look like a miracle. Sometimes it looks like a sleepless king.
That is an incredible aha moment.
Yeah.
But as you mentioned, not everyone was comfortable with that hiddenness. You mentioned the Greek editions trying to fix it.
Yeah.
And the survey also brings up another fascinating historical wrinkle, the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Ah, yes. The Dead Sea Scrolls. Discovered in the mid-20th century in the caves at Qumran.
A massive discovery.
This is one of the most important archaeological discoveries in history. The caves contained fragments or entire copies of every single book of the Hebrew Bible.
Except for one.
Except for one, the Book of Esther. It is the only book completely missing from their extensive library.
That is wild. They had multiple copies of Genesis, Isaiah, Psalms, but 0 copies of Esther. Why do scholars think they deliberately left it out?
While we can't be 100% certain without a document explicitly stating their reasoning, the widely held scholarly speculation provides a fascinating psychological insight.
Okay, let's hear it.
The Qumran community was a deeply ascetic, rigidly religious, separatist sect. They literally fled into the desert to get away from what they saw as the corrupt, secular society of Jerusalem.
So they were very strict.
Very strict. So imagine this community reading Esther. They likely struggled immensely with a text that didn't look overtly religious. Think about it from their strict perspective. Esther lacks the name of God entirely. It takes place completely in a secular, pagan court. The heroes participate in Persian customs.
They eat Persian food.
They eat Persian food. Esther hides her Jewish identity, marries a Gentile king, and lives in a royal harem. For a strict, separatist community like the one at Qumran, Esther would have seemed far too assimilated, far too secular, and frankly, deeply compromised.
Like they couldn't see the profound theology because it wasn't packaged the way they expected it to be.
Exactly.
They expected explicit religious language, maybe some angels, some overt condemnation of the pagans, and instead they get a gritty, complex, politically ambiguous thriller about working inside a corrupt system to survive.
They completely missed the point that providence governs history even in divine silence.
They wanted a story about escaping the world, and Esther's a story about surviving within it.
Surviving and subverting it.
And with this lens of hidden providence firmly established, let's walk through exactly how this tension plays out in the lives of the characters on the ground. Let's look at the drama as it unfolds, focusing on power, risk, and the incredibly complex legal reversals across these 10 chapters.
Let's do it. We need to detail the specific psychological and physical journeys of our main characters, Esther, Mordecai, and Haman.
Let's start with Esther herself. Her Hebrew name is Hadassah. She is an orphan Jewish girl raised by her older cousin, Mordecai.
Yes.
And her entry into the story in chapter 2, look, if you just read it superficially, it sounds like a fairy tale beauty pageant.
Yeah.
But if you read the actual text closely, it is incredibly dark.
It is very dark, and the text is deeply unsentimental about it.
What actually happens?
Well, after Queen Vashti is deposed for refusing the king's attendants suggest a massive empire-wide sweep. They command that beautiful young virgins be forcibly gathered from all 127 provinces and brought to the royal harem in Susa so the king can evaluate them and choose a new queen.
Forcibly gathered. That's the key phrase.
Esther is taken into this system. She doesn't volunteer. The survey points out that this reflects the brutal historical reality of autocratic control over women's bodies.
So she's basically a prisoner.
Esther starts her journey as a commodified woman in a royal harem. She is subject to a mandatory year of beauty treatments, 6 months with oil of myrrh, 6 months with perfumes and cosmetics, before being evaluated by the king for a single night.
She is completely powerless. She is stripped of her agency. She is hiding her Jewish identity on Mordecai's strict instructions, navigating this terrifying, luxurious prison where one wrong move means you spend the rest of your life locked in the secondary harem of concubines, never seeing the sun again.
The stakes for her personally are incredibly high.
But she finds favor with Haggai, the eunuch in charge, and ultimately she is chosen by the king as the new queen.
Yes.
Meanwhile, while she is trapped in the inner palace, Mordecai is positioned at what the text calls the King's Gate.
The King's Gate is a crucial location. To a modern ear, it just sounds like a door.
Right, like a front entrance.
But in the ancient Near East, the city gate, or the palace gate, is the political, administrative, and judicial center of daily life.
So it's busy.
It's essentially the town square mixed with the Supreme Court. It's where legal disputes are settled, where officials meet, where merchants trade, and where all the rumors are heard.
It's a hub of information.
It's a space of immense access, but also of acute danger, because you are constantly under the watchful eye of the empire.
And it's here, sitting at the gate, that Mordecai overhears the assassination plot we mentioned earlier.
Right.
2 of the king's officers, Bigthana and Teresh, who guarded the doorway, become angry and conspired to assassinate King Xerxes.
Mordecai finds out, reports it through Queen Esther, the conspirators are investigated and hanged on a gallows, and the heroic deed is recorded in the royal annals.
But he gets no reward.
Yeah.
He saves the most powerful man in the world, and he gets absolutely nothing, which, in an honor-shame culture, is a massive breach of court etiquette.
It is a staggering oversight. But as Velasquez points out in the survey, this delay is thematic. It is deeply theological.
How so?
Hidden fidelity matters, even when it is unacknowledged. Apparent delay is not divine neglect. The author is showing us that the pieces are being set up on the border for a much larger deliverance down the line.
Right.
Quiet, unrewarded faithfulness is a recurring, poignant theme for those living in exile. You do the right thing, and the empire ignores you.
So we have the board set. Esther is isolated in the palace. Mordecai is keeping watch at the gate. And then suddenly we get the meteoric rise of Haman the Agagite in chapter 3.
Enter the villain.
The king, for reasons completely unexplained, elevates Haman to the highest seat of honor among all the nobles. He becomes the grand vizier.
The second in command.
And the king commands that everyone at the gate must kneel and bow down to Haman whenever he passes. But Mordecai refuses. He will not bow, and he will not kneel.
And this singular act of defiance sparks the central, terrifying crisis of the entire book.
Because Haman notices.
Yes. Mordecai's refusal is deeply, inextricably tied to his identity. The text stresses that his fellow officials at the gate ask him day after day why he disobeys the king's command, and he finally tells them it's because he is a Yehudi, a Jew.
Wait, let's clarify this. Because bowing to a king or a high official was pretty standard practice, even for ancient Israelites, right?
Yes, usually it was just respectful.
Why is this specific bow a bridge too far for Mordecai?
It's an excellent question, and scholars debate the exact nuance. Some argue that Haman was demanding a level of reverence, perhaps prostration, that bordered on divine worship, which a faithful Jew would only reserve for God.
That makes sense.
But there is a deeper historical layer here. The text goes out of its way to identify Haman as an Agagite.
Agagite, what does that mean?
For an ancient Israelite reader, alarm bells would immediately start ringing. The Agagites were descended from Agag, the king of the Amalekites.
The Amalekites.
Yes. If you go back hundreds of years in biblical history to the book of 1 Samuel, the Amalekites were the ancient ancestral sworn enemies of the Israelites.
Oh, wow.
King Saul, who significantly was from the tribe of Benjamin, just like Mordecai, failed to completely destroy King Agag when commanded to do so.
So there is ancient bad blood here.
Exactly. So Mordecai, drawing a hard line here, isn't just about personal pride. It's an ancient, ancestral, spiritual turf war playing out in a Persian courtyard.
It's centuries of generational trauma and conflict bubbling up at the gate of Susa. Haman finds out Mordecai won't bow, and he is infuriated.
He is furious.
But his pride is so massive and yet so incredibly fragile that simply punishing or killing Mordecai isn't enough to soothe his ego. He decides he must destroy all of Mordecai's people, every single Jew, throughout the entire 127 provinces of the empire.
The escalation is breathtakingly evil.
It really is.
Haman goes to the king. He doesn't even name the Jews. He just vaguely frames them as a subversive, dangerous element.
What does he say?
He says, there's a certain people dispersed among the provinces whose laws are different from everyone else's, and they don't obey the king's laws. It's not in your best interest to tolerate them.
He makes them sound like a threat to the state.
Yes. And then he offers a massive, staggering bribe of silver to the royal treasury to pay for their destruction.
And what's the king's response to this?
The king's response is chilling in its apathy. He doesn't ask who they are. He doesn't investigate. He just slips off his signet ring, the ultimate symbol of his legislative authority, hands it to Haman, and basically signs a blank check for genocide.
Unbelievable.
He says, keep the money and do with the people as you please.
It's the banality of evil, perfectly encapsulated. A bureaucrat just signing away thousands of lives over a drink.
Precisely.
The decree is written by the royal scribes in every language, sealed with the king's ring, and sent out by the legendary Persian postal couriers. The decree explicitly orders the annihilation, slaughter, and destruction of all Jews, young and old, women and children, on a single day. The 13th day of the 12th month, the month of Adar.
And it allows the attackers to plunder their property.
Adding financial incentive to murder?
Yes. The text notes that as the couriers ride out, the king and Haman sit down to drink. But the city of Susa is thrown into absolute bewilderment.
People are horrified.
The citizens are horrified. When Mordecai learns what has been done, he tears his clothes, puts on sackcloth and ashes, and goes out into the middle of the city, wailing loudly and bitterly right up to the king's gate.
That's a very public display.
It is. This intense public mourning spreads to every province as the decree arrives, and this public wailing forces the crisis inward.
Inward towards Esther.
Right. It forces Esther, who has been completely isolated and insulated in the unimaginable luxury of the inner palace, to finally confront the horrific reality facing her people.
Mordecai sends her a copy of the written decree through an intermediary, a eunuch named Hathach. And Mordecai commands Esther to go into the king's presence to beg for mercy and plead for her people.
And Esther, understandably, pushes back.
She is terrified. She sends a message back saying, everyone in the empire knows that if any man or woman approaches the king in the inner court without being officially summoned, there is only one law. They are put to death.
The law is absolute.
Right. The only exception is if the king extends the golden scepter to them. And I haven't been summoned to see the king in 30 days.
She hasn't been called.
Let's modernize the stakes here, because it's easy to just read this as ancient palace protocol. Yeah. This isn't just dropping in on your boss unannounced to ask for a favor.
No, definitely not.
It's bypassing the ultimate, heavily armed, paranoid imperial gatekeepers. It's walking into a room knowing that the explicit, unbending legal penalty for interrupting the supreme ruler is immediate, on-the-spot execution.
Unless he randomly decides he's in a good mood and points a stick at you.
Exactly. And she hasn't seen him in a month, which means she might have fallen out of favor.
It is a profound, life-altering legal and physical risk. The inner court is a space of lethal danger.
Vashti was deposed simply for not coming when called. What will happen to Esther if she comes uninvited?
Mordecai's response to her fear is the absolute theological high-water mark of the book.
What does he say?
He sends word back to her, and his words are piercing. Do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape.
He's not pulling any punches.
Not at all, he continues. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance. The Hebrew phrase is revak, wehala, will arise for the Jews from another place, but you and your father's family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this.
For such a time as this.
Yeah.
It is easily one of the most famous, most quoted lines in the entire Bible.
For good reason.
Mordecai is basically putting it all on the line. He is saying providence is moving, deliverance is going to happen because God will not abandon his covenant, whether you choose to participate or not. But this is your moment of agency. Look at your life. Look at your entire traumatic journey. Being orphaned, being commodified, being forcibly taken from your home, enduring the harem. All of that suffering might have been allowed by Providence precisely to put you in the exact, specific, physical location needed to stop a genocide.
It is a stunning, paradigm-shifting realization of vocation discovered under the absolute threat of death.
It changes everything for her.
Mordecai is telling her that her position of privilege is not for her own comfort. It is a tool for justice. Providence does not cancel human responsibility. It summons it.
And Esther's response to this is the turning point of her character, isn't it?
It absolutely is. She shifts from a passive, hidden, terrified figure into an identity-conscious, incredibly strategic leader.
She takes charge.
She sends a message back to Mordecai, commanding him. She says, "Go, gather together all the Jews who are in Susa and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my attendants will fast as you do."
And then what?
She says, "When this is done, I will go to the king, even though it is against the law. And if I perish, I perish."
If I perish, I perish. It gives me chills every time I read it.
It's total surrender.
She uses the profound spiritual preparation of fasting, which, in the ancient world, was a physical way of expressing total dependence on God before she takes the political action of approaching the king.
Right. She relies on the unseen before she steps into the scene.
And it works. On the third day, she puts on her royal robes, stands in the inner court, and the king sees her.
And he extends the golden scepter.
Her life is spared. The king asks her what she wants, offering her up to half the kingdom. But instead of immediately blurting out, "Haman is trying to kill us all," she uses extreme, agonizing strategic timing.
She says so smart.
She invites the king and Haman to a banquet. And then, at that first banquet, when the king asks again what she wants, she invites him to another banquet the next day.
She is playing an incredibly tense, high-stakes, long game.
Why the delay?
She knows she cannot just attack Haman directly. He is the king's favorite. She has to isolate him. She is maximizing the king's curiosity, making him wonder what is so important that she risks her life but delays the request.
Building the suspense.
And simultaneously, she is inflating Haman's ego to the bursting point. Haman leaves that first banquet thinking he is untouchable.
He thinks he's made it.
He goes home, brags to his wife about his wealth and his exclusive invitation from the queen, and then complains that Mordecai still won't bow. That is the exact night he builds the 75-foot gallows to hang Mordecai.
But it is exactly between these two banquets that the pivot of the chiasm happens, right? The insomnia.
Yes, the king has his sleepless night, Mordecai is honored, and Haman has to parade his mortal enemy through the streets.
So by the time they reach the second banquet in chapter 7, Haman is psychologically completely off balance.
He is humiliated and terrified.
And that is when Esther finally strikes. The king asks a third time what she wants. She answers, "If I have found favor with you, your majesty, and if it pleases you, grant me my life. This is my petition, and spare my people. This is my request."
For I and my people have been sold to be destroyed, killed, and annihilated.
The king is shocked. He asks who would dare do such a thing. And Esther points the finger and names a threat. An adversary and enemy, this wicked Haman.
The dramatic release of tension is explosive. The king is enraged. He storms out into the palace garden to think.
And Haman panics.
Haman, realizing he is a dead man, falls on the couch where Esther is reclining, begging her for his life.
Bad move.
The worst move. The king comes back into the room at that exact moment, misinterprets Haman's desperate pleading as an attempted physical assault on the queen, and Haman's fate is sealed.
Wow.
One of the eunuchs conveniently points out the massive gallows Haman just built in his yard for Mordecai. The king says, "Impale him on it."
It is swift, judicial, and incredibly darkly ironic. The villain falls into his own trap.
It's the perfect ending.
Except it isn't the ending. And this is where the book gets really gritty and complex. Haman is dead, but the crisis isn't over.
No, it's not.
And this brings up a fascinating, highly specific legal dilemma of Persian law that the author details in chapters 8 and 9. Haman is dead, but the decree of annihilation, the piece of paper with the king's seal on it ordering the murder of every Jew on the 13th of Adar, is still active.
The couriers have already delivered it to the ends of the earth.
And according to Persian law, within the narrative world of the story, a decree written in the king's name and sealed with his ring cannot be revoked. Not even by the king himself.
The law is absolute.
The empire's absolutism is suddenly a trap even for the man who rules it.
Exactly. This is a crucial point that many people miss when they read Esther. The king cannot just issue a memo saying, "Hey, never mind about the 13th of Adar, my mistake."
Right. The system doesn't allow for takebacks.
The legal machinery of death was already in motion, and it was unstoppable. So justice here required incredibly technical institutional and legal action.
It wasn't enough to just have wishful thinking.
And it wasn't enough that the main villain died. Systemic evil had been unleashed, and it required a systemic solution.
So what do?
The king gives his signet ring, the same ring he gave to Haman to Mordecai. And Mordecai, working with Esther, has to draft a highly technical counter-decree.
A counter-decree.
Because he cannot cancel the first decree, this new edict grants the Jews in every city the legal right to assemble, to arm themselves, and to violently protect themselves.
Wow. So they are allowed to fight back.
It legally permits them to destroy, kill, and annihilate any armed force of any nationality or province that might attack them, and to plunder their property.
They essentially have to fight fire with fire, but they do it strictly within the bounds of the established legal system.
Yes.
It is a brilliant, desperate administrative maneuver. The empire's language of destruction is repurposed for Jewish survival. The survey notes that deliverance here is not only rescue from physical death, but the restoration of social standing and political legitimacy.
It flips the power dynamic completely.
When the counter-decree is published, there is gladness and joy among the Jews. And the text notes a fascinating sociological shift. Many people of other nationalities actually profess to be Jews or side with them because the fear of the Jews had fallen on them.
The balance of power in the empire entirely shifts.
And this incredibly detailed legal and administrative resolution brings us perfectly to the deep sociological core of the book.
It really does.
How exactly does a minority group survive within a system that is entirely designed to crush them, or at best, forcefully assimilate them?
The text of Esther is deeply, profoundly shaped by ancient honor-shame dynamics, the necessity of patronage, and the acute daily vulnerability of ethnic minorities.
Let's really talk about Mordecai and Esther as two distinct representatives of this dynamic, because they give us two very different but highly complementary sides of navigating the empire.
Okay.
You have Mordecai, who is constantly at the gate. He represents the public, visible boundary of identity. He refuses to bow to Haman. He draws a hard line in the sand. Why is that public boundary so necessary?
Because without a boundary, an identity dissolves. Mordecai maintains his Yehudi identity in public, even when it sparks a massive, life-threatening crisis.
He won't bend?
He represents the irreducible minimum of faith, the things you simply will not compromise, regardless of the cost. In an honor-shame culture, to bow to Haman would be to publicly shame his god and his heritage. Mordecai forces the issue.
But then you have Esther, and Esther's methodology is entirely different.
Very different.
She operates completely on the inside. She hides her identity for years until the exact, strategically viable moment. She uses her physical proximity to power, her deep understanding of complex court etiquette, and her absolute brilliant mastery of the Persian banquet culture to resolve the very crisis that Mordecai's public stand initiated.
It's a profound, necessary partnership. Mordecai provides the moral absolute. Esther provides the strategic execution.
They need each other.
The question the book forces you to ask is, how do you navigate an overwhelming, corrupt system without dissolving into it?
And what's the answer?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the sociological meaning of the Book of Esther is that it provides an incredibly durable blueprint for adaptive, courageous diaspora identity.
Right.
It violently pushes back against the idea that the only way to remain faithful to your identity is to completely withdraw from society, to go live in a cave in the desert like the Qumran community did.
Right. You don't have to separate yourself completely from public or secular life to maintain your integrity. That is such a crucial takeaway.
You can work inside the system.
You can be a queen in a pagan Persian court. You can be an administrative official drafting complex legal decrees with a secular king's signet ring.
Yes, exactly.
You can engage deeply with the bureaucracy, the culture, and the politics of your time, but you use your position within that system to seek the welfare of your people and to enact justice.
It is the theology of faithful presence. You are living in Susa, but you are not of Susa.
Yeah.
You use the tools of the empire to subvert the evil of the empire.
I love that.
And the ultimate lasting expression of this survival and identity maintenance is the establishment of the Festival of Purim at the end of the book, in chapters 9 and 10.
Right, the celebration.
After the Jews successfully defend themselves against their attackers on the 13th of Adar and rest on the 14th, Mordecai writes all this down. He sends letters to all the Jews, near and far, legally enjoining them to observe these days annually.
And they take the name Pur, the chaotic pagan lot that Haman cast for their destruction, and they flip it, turning it into a plural, joyous celebration. Purim.
They reclaim the word.
The exact day chosen by a roll of the dice for their execution becomes a perpetual day of feasting and gladness. But it's not just a party. It's not just eating and drinking. The text explicitly specifies it is a day for sending gifts of food to one another and, crucially, giving gifts to the poor.
Ritualized rejoicing and almsgiving. This is absolutely critical for long-term community survival.
But why is that so critical?
Thalasis notes in the survey that memory is a fundamental, non-negotiable part of deliverance. God's providence, even when hidden, must be explicitly narrated, celebrated, and transmitted to the next generation.
So they don't forget.
Human beings are forgetful. Communities need rituals of remembrance to prevent what we might call spiritual amnesia.
Spiritual amnesia, that's a great phrase.
If you don't ritualize your history, you forget who you are. The Festival of Purim institutionalizes the memory of their near annihilation and miraculous deliverance, ensuring that the resilient identity formed in that crucible of the Persian Empire is passed down forever.
It is a stunningly effective sociological strategy. They survived the empire, and then they threw a party that outlasted the empire by thousands of years.
It's beautiful.
And this incredibly durable model of survival, this intricate, beautiful weaving of hidden theology, precise history, and adaptive sociology, is exactly why Esther holds such a vital, indispensable place in the broader biblical canon.
Absolutely.
Which brings us to our final overarching thought, the grand tapestry. Let's look at the canonical and contemporary relevance of this book. Because it doesn't just stand alone. It sits in conversation with the rest of the text.
To really appreciate the weight of Esther, we have to look at where it physically sits in the canon.
Okay, where is it?
In the Hebrew Bible, it is part of the Ketuvim, the writings, and it is read annually at the festival of Purim. In the Protestant canon, it usually sits right next to the historical books of Ezra and Nehemiah.
Right, Ezra and Nehemiah.
And that specific proximity is incredibly instructive.
I want to look at that contrast because it's fascinating. If you read Ezra and Nehemiah, they're all about the Jews who left the Persian Empire to return to the Promised Land.
Yes.
They are physically rebuilding the shattered walls of Jerusalem. They are rebuilding the temple. They are strictly reinstituting the law of Moses. It's a powerful story of physical and spiritual restoration in the land.
Yes. Ezra and Nehemiah represent the visible, temple-centered, geographically gathered covenant community. They are doing exactly what you would expect a religious community to do.
But Esther is different.
Very different. Esther is the story of those who stayed behind. For whatever reason, maybe they had established businesses, maybe the journey was too dangerous, maybe they were deeply assimilated. They did not return to Judah.
They stayed in Susa.
They remained in the dispersion, right in the heart of the Persian Empire. Together, these books show two distinct but entirely complementary covenant trajectories. You have restoration in the land and you have preservation in exile.
I love comparing it to an old vinyl record.
Right.
Think about an album. You got the A-side.
Yeah.
It's the track everyone knows, the one that gets all the radio play. That's Ezra and Nehemiah.
Right.
It's the glorious, faithful, deeply religious return to Jerusalem to rebuild the temple. But then you flip the record over and you have the B-side.
The B-side is Esther.
This B story is happening right in the belly of the imperial beast. And the B-side is just as crucial, just as inspired for the survival of the people.
It really is.
It answers the profound grief and disorientation of the exile with a story of providential reversal. It shows the reader that God's reach is not geographically limited.
Precisely. The exile did not cancel the ancient covenant. It severely tested it. The Book of Esther definitively proves that the covenant people are not somehow outside of providential reach just because they are living outside of the Promised Land, far from the temple, operating in a secular system.
That's a huge comfort.
And while there is no direct, explicit messianic prophecy in the Book of Esther, there is no promise of a coming king like you find in Isaiah or Psalms. A careful, Christ-centered interpretation sees a massive, undeniable redemptive pattern at work in the narrative structure itself.
I know you love this part. Break down that pattern for us. How does a gritty Persian court thriller filled with political assassination and bureaucratic decrees connect to the broader redemptive grammar of the Bible?
Think about the underlying structural grammar of the story. You have a people who are trapped under a universal sentence of death, condemned by an irreversible legal decree. They cannot save themselves.
Right.
Then you have an interceding mediator, Esther. She has to enter the innermost presence of the supreme ruler to plead for the lives of her people. But to do so, to mediate on their behalf, she has to willingly risk her own life.
Her famous statement,
"If I perish, I perish," is a willing, conscious acceptance of the possibility of death in order to secure the salvation of others.
wow.
Through her courageous mediation, the condemnation is dramatically reversed. The great enemy is defeated on his own gallows, and the ultimate result is a massive communal deliverance that is celebrated with an eternal feast.
It is the exact, precise underlying grammar of the gospel message. You have the threatened, condemned people. You have the royal mediator who risks death, and in the narrative of Christ, actually suffers the death of the curse. You have the total reversal of that curse, the ultimate public defeat of the enemy, and the resulting communal salvation that ends in a great feast. It is a brilliant Christological typology embedded right into the historical narrative of the diaspora.
It perfectly anticipates the cross and resurrection logic. Condemnation turned miraculously to life. The day of death turned into a festival of joy.
It's beautiful.
And that underlying grammar is exactly why Esther remains so incredibly pastorally useful and sharply contemporary today.
And I want to bring that directly back to you, the listener. Because unless you are living in a perfectly unified, ideal, utopian society, which none of us are, the Book of Esther speaks directly into your daily situation.
It really does.
You are likely living in a pluralist, unstable, rapidly changing, and often deeply secular culture. You're dealing with massive systems of power, corporate, political, social currents that are highly bureaucratic, sometimes completely apathetic to your existence, and occasionally overtly hostile to your core values.
And in the face of that, Esther teaches us that true courage is almost never the absence of fear.
That's an important distinction.
When Esther said, "If I perish, I perish," she wasn't feeling invincible. She was terrified to go before the king. Courage is faithful action taken despite paralyzing fear.
Right.
The book also teaches that your quiet, seemingly ordinary, completely unglamorous actions, like Mordecai faithfully keeping records and doing his job at the city gate, or Esther meticulously, quietly planning a dinner party, might actually be the exact, precise mechanisms of providence in the world.
It proves that you do not need a booming voice from the sky or a burning bush to know that you are placed exactly where you are for a reason.
Exactly.
Your current position, however frustrating, however mundane, or however secular it feels, might just be timed for such a time as this. It might be exactly where you need to be to bring about relief and deliverance for someone else.
It offers a profound, empowering theology of vocation. It insists that massive public power is ultimately accountable, even when it seems completely, terrifyingly unchecked. And it promises that the humble, the marginalized, and the faithful will ultimately be lifted up.
So to bring all of these incredible threads together, we started today looking at the opulent, wildly unstable, paranoid courts of ancient Susa.
The banquets and the paranoia.
We analyzed a 180-day PR stunt that was desperately trying to mask a king's profound institutional insecurity. We explored the absolute brilliant literary structure of the book, that giant chiasm that folds in on itself, pivoting entirely on a single random night of insomnia.
The mirror structure.
Right. We saw how the author used deep irony and a massive boomerang effect to mercilessly mock and expose the fragility of absolute imperial power.
And we spent time unpacking the theological heart of the book.
The hiddenness of God.
How the deliberate, glaring absence of the divine name in the Hebrew text isn't a mistake, but a paradox. It highlights a much deeper, much more mature theology of hidden providence. It perfectly matches the gritty, lived reality of the exile.
And finally, we saw how Esther and Mordecai provide us with a timeless, durable model for maintaining courage, integrity, and identity in the face of systemic, even lethal threats.
They worked inside the system without losing themselves to it.
They navigated the brutal, irreversible realities of Persian administrative law to secure legal protection for their people, and then they institutionalized that incredible memory through the festival of Purim, guaranteeing they would never suffer from spiritual amnesia.
It is a truly incredible journey, from the terrifying threat of global genocide to the explosive joy of deliverance.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I have a thought for you to carry with you. I want you to reflect on your own King's Gate moments.
For where you are right now.
Exactly. Look at where you are positioned right now in your life. Maybe you are in a role at work or in your family where you feel completely invisible. Maybe you are doing the right thing day in and day out.
And getting no credit for it.
You're uncovering problems, you're keeping things running, you are holding the line, and you are feeling entirely, painfully unrewarded, just like Mordecai was for years.
It's a common feel.
I want you to consider the possibility that the very place you feel most stuck, the place you feel most ignored, might actually be the exact place you are needed most. Your proximity to a specific problem might not be an accident. it might be the providential setup for its ultimate solution.
That is a powerful way to apply the tension of the text. The delays we experience, the times when we feel completely forgotten by the system or by God, are often the necessary, quiet preparation for the right timing.
Absolutely. And I want to leave you with this final, slightly provocative thought to mull over as you go about your week. We talked earlier about the ultra-religious community at Qumran, the people who preserved the Dead Sea Scrolls in the desert.
Right, the ones who left Esther out.
They likely excluded the Book of Esther from their massive library. They looked at the text, and what did they see? They saw a story about a terrifying beauty pageant, a drunken secular king, a lot of opulent banquets, people hiding their faith, and absolutely no explicit, comfortable mention of God.
They couldn't see past the surface.
And they probably decided, in their strictness, that it just wasn't religious enough for them to bother reading. They judged a masterpiece entirely by its packaging.
It's a tragedy, really.
Imagine deliberately ignoring a profound, life-saving survival guide. Imagine missing a masterclass in navigating complex power dynamics and maintaining your core identity, all just because it didn't match your expected preferred aesthetic.
You'd miss out on so much wisdom.
So the question I want to leave you with is this. What essential truths, what hidden movements of providence, or what brilliant, life-changing solutions might you be entirely missing in your own life right now, simply because they don't look the way you expected them to? When the waters of your life are muddy, when the environment is completely secular, and when the packaging isn't what you asked for, are you still paying attention?